everybody will roll their value, and then we're going to go in order from the smallest to the highest number. Okay, so which is fine. But what's really interesting about this, and very different from some other games, is that you roll again at the beginning of each round.
Mm.
And in play, what that means is that we treat rounds as a kind of cinematic notion of the new normal. Something has happened, or something has changed up on everybody a little bit, or the way they reacted to what just happened is incorporated into this new thing. So basically, it's saying after you do anything, you either capitalize on it by rolling well, that is to say, low, which means you smoothly move into your next action, or you get thrown off somehow and lose your balance, or you know lose your concentration, or get surprised by something, and so you roll badly in your next initiative for the next round, and you're taking longer to get your shit together. Seems to be sort of the implication. And so that's kind of interesting. I mean, we can make it work but the important thing to remember is that you never know, round by round, you never know who's coming in first each time.
Question here.
Yes.
When in snake form, I didn't really find there were no adjustments.
Right.
So I assume it's only you roll what you have by your agility. And there actually bite is 2 attacks per round.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, let's see what that does. If you have more than one attack per round with a single weapon, which this counts, increase your initiative by 1 for each additional attack. So that means that, yeah. So it makes you just a little slower because you're using these two things. We'll have to double check to see. Does that mean you get a double tap when it's your turn? And I think it does.
There is a bit of the text because everything looked clear until I got to rules about surprise, and then you get that value about your reaction value, which is these dice you roll if you are surprised, and then you double the result, and you start talking about how this is half seconds instead of seconds.
Oh my god!
And you need to be within 24 increments, because if you go over 24 increments, you don't do anything in that turn. And if you go over 48 increments, and it was really clear until that.
Right. There's multiple authors of this game.
Yeah.
And I can bet, based on my experience looking at so many games in design, that somebody was told, okay, figure out the combat system.
Yeah.
And the person who loves doing that shit ran off and wrote their dream combat system, which means that it has all of these finer and finer and finer and finer details as little pits that you drop into during play. All of a sudden, you're like, oh shit, we've got 50 things we suddenly have to attend to. And whoever that was is thrilled with himself that they finally made, at last, a realistic fighting system, right? The dream of all such people.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this and going, oh my God, I know how that got that way. So anyway, though, since that is important, and I'll study that, because in this game, and given the environment and given the kind of confrontations that we're talking about, surprise is everything.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a fair fight, right? Not in this environment, not with this kind of damage that you can take in this game. Nobody wants a fair fight. Everybody wants to bushwhack. Everybody wants to ambush. Everybody, you want to surprise them, damn it. So there's going to be a lot of considerations a lot of the time. Like, one person will be surprised, one person won't, and it's going to matter. So we need to double check how that works. But anyway, let's say nobody's surprised and we've got our initiative now. The actual rolls to hit seem pretty easy. The actual combat mechanics don't seem very hard at all. And I think each of the miracles, like the totem and ancestor miracles that Helma has, I think all of those are pretty complete in their rules, like what you have to roll to get this to happen and how far it goes and stuff like that. The meat and potatoes of getting through the game. I mean, we have to talk a little bit about damage and what happens to you. If you hit 0 hit points, you don't die, I think. You only die if you go down to some negative value related to your spirit.
It's 1/5
Right.
of your spirit negative, I think.
So the point is that you take 0 hit points. They've got an unconsciousness rule.
Yeah.
So that's one consideration. You can be knocked out and badly hurt, but they're going to have to savage you or really nail you to kill you.
And I have to comment on the character sheet because despite the amount of information this kind of game has, it's very clean. I mean,
I agree. I agree about
the
that.
information is very available and it tells you what to write. And it's a useful.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The nice thing about all the fantasy heartbreakers is, crazy as many of them can be, they really do grow out of the table. They really do grow out of usable instrumentation. You know, the people who wrote these kinds of games, and it's funny because often the games are a horrific mess in design or concept, but the fact that people played them, if you gut through, I mean, this one's very clear, but you read some of them and you feel like the person's like saying beatnik poetry or something. I mean, they're so excited, you know, about telling you about their game. And yet, when you actually fill out a character sheet, because I've done it for many of them, you're kind of like, wait a minute, you know, I could play this guy. You know, I got my numbers here. I can do this. So, anyway, in this case, I wanted to say, go ahead, take your time, you know, but I think bringing the characters up to 5th level is good. And so that means that you will have, as Helma pointed out, that's 55 points. Don't worry about the spirit rolls or any of that suffering. Just go ahead and, you know, assume those are.
It's based on intelligence, so it's 55. It's 44 for me because you don't get bonus points for the first level. Right. So I have 61 intelligence. It's 11 per level, so I have 44. From what I understand, I'm going.
I think so.
So yeah, first level is 100 points for everybody, no matter how smart you are.
Oh, okay.
Okay, right. So
miscalculated there.
44 more.
Yeah, I have to take like 10 off as well.
Well, who knows? I mean, maybe we'll just say 6th.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Let's go ahead. Make them 6th level. I don't care. I mean, the more the merrier. And I think that it will be, fine. You don't really have to come up. You're not suddenly responsible to come up with the saga of making 6th level. I'm not even sure we're going to have that concept that you guys actually worked your way up. You know, maybe this is just where you're at and done. So as if the game starts at 6th level, and that's fine with me. I think, so we don't have to, make that transition in points literal in narrative terms. So then we also have, and again, I mean, it goes back to RuneQuest. I really don't know what it means to have 25% in anything. I don't know what that means fictionally. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So, Helma, what was that?
I have a question about this skills because I mean, they list a bunch of wilderness skills, and I'm like, I can't have them all, but I want to be able to enter out of the community.
And I agree. I mean,
and I'm living in basically on the outskirts of the desert.
You need some of these things, right?
I imagine I know most of those things.
I agree. And there's two
how
ways
many of those do I need?
There's two ways to look at this kind of skill system in a game. And we can blame RuneQuest for starting this problem. because they didn't answer it. The question is, first of all, if we imagine the character in a naturalistic, non-stressed situation, do we imagine that every single time that they have ever gone hunting, that it was represented in the fiction by rolling? Even, or do we say we're interested in rolling because this is the story time? What we're looking at is the character in a story. The character and all the other characters and everything. And if we're talking about the character outside of the story, like we come back, a week later, the character is hunted fine. Right? So it's only when you're in some kind of adverse situation, or we're saying that while our gaze as players is focused upon you, that's when we have rolls. But that doesn't mean that we should imagine a simulated game world out there where every single non-player character is rolling for every goddamn thing they do. Right? Now, there are people who do want it to be like that, and they would be mad at me for saying this and say, no, that is what the skill sets are for. That guy is good at it, and so he does better than this guy throughout their lives. And that's what the dice are for. The dice simulate that quality that is a feature of the fiction. Don't get all meta on me. You can't say that they can hunt fine these days, and then when we look at them, all of a sudden they have a chance to fail. And I'm saying, well, yeah, you can. That's what stories do. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's kind of the way I look at it. Your character, I imagine that all of your characters can do everything you need to get along in your daily lives. You are unfortunately player characters all of a sudden, and that means that you have more of a chance to screw up than you would if you weren't. I mean, that's the curse. This is the day when things went wrong. And so I think that's the only logic that I can bring to a game like this. So what I mean to say is that choose the skill to put points into of those wilderness skills. Choose the skill that you really would prefer not to fail in. That the ones that you don't choose are going to be the ones that will give you a lot of trouble when they are under stress. Right? So, on a nice desert night, you'll do fine for any of those skills. On the desert night that we're looking at, and you don't have that skill, it's your day to screw up.
Oh, I remember how that is.
Right. Oh, yeah. So anyway, that's, I think, probably the way to look at it. I can't imagine.
I think the text.
I can't
the
imagine
text of
any other. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the text of the skills kind of leans that way. I think I don't know which year this game comes from, but I have
later than
this
you may think. It's like 2008.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a very late stage, very late stage heartbreaker. Yeah,
that makes sense because I think that there is a lot here that seems to try to quietly incorporate a few ideas that the text of the skills very often goes over. It makes it sound like you're rolling when it's interesting to roll.
Right.
For example,
Right.
Foraging, the DM could just say, "Okay, there is no problem here
Right.
finding food."
I think
For
that
instance.
that's the way I'm going to handle it. Is that a lot of the time, it's the skills are automatic, and that we're going to be interested in whether you can forage when there's a storm or when
Yeah.
when you're dodging arrows, basically.